the Buddha's words, the truth of the Dhamma in his teachings, we often forget how they have come a long way since they were first spoken by the great teacher, Lord Buddha. They have traversed and traveled through time, space, cultures, across civilizations, language barriers, philosophical interpretations, lots and lots of ignorance, conceit, scholarly ignorance, such as commentators that are notorious for having fallen in love with their interpretations, with their thoughts, with their own ideologies. So when I read the Dhamma, now in my work in retranslating the words of Lord Buddha, I see when all these many influences have been detrimental to the Dhamma, in alienating the Dhamma from the purely aliveness, the living experience of living through, experiencing suffering, pain, misunderstanding, which is another form of suffering, one of the worst kind of dukkha. So it's so hard to make sense of what today's translations, both in digital form and in written form, in actual hard copy books, texts, are bringing forward. Many translators, modern translators, are just copying off of each other with a little bit of tweaking here and there, but essentially they're keeping that same tradition of not properly representing the teachings. As if there's this tendency to speed up things, as if who can finish the most suttas and can put them in some compilation, some chopped up pieces of suttas, missing sentences. Everything is shortened. People are not taking time to sit down with the suttas, to really try to understand practically. By putting in the effort to remove those other factors, those mutations that have taken place. Instead, by not doing enough work and still putting out this work out there, today it's not Rhys Davis, for example, from 150 years ago, who are putting out these translations. We have modern day scholars or people who just learn some Pali and start their own translating work. It's not a matter of just translating. It's the meaning. It's the quality, the contextual quality of the meaning, which is being lost in translation. Truly. So I am saddened. I'm really deeply saddened by this fact, and the work that I do right now in undoing this is very similar, I now see, to the work that a restorer of a painting, for example, does from several hundred years ago or 1,000 years ago. The layers upon layers of gunk, of things, of substances, mildew or whatever it is, smoke that has solidified upon the layers of oil painting, for example, or the varnish. They need to meticulously do the work to get back as close to the original colors intended by the artist who executed this piece of work, this artwork. Of course, my effort and intention is further added with fervency, given that what I'm trying to do in my own very small capacity, very, very small capacity, is not to restore an artwork, but the meaning of the Dhamma that I find to be something that is becoming more and more lost every day. Even though, ironically enough, there are so many resources out there that promulgate, that put out the Dhamma, that send it out into the masses. But what is the quality of this thing that they are sending out? There's a lack of understanding, lack of truthful representation of the Dhamma. So my wish is that individuals become a lot more critical when the sentence does not make sense, when it's too scholarly language, when it's too philosophical. Pause. The Buddha would not teach such a thing. More of the philosophical movements that came into the earliest part of the Dhamma, the tradition of the Dhamma, came after the Third Council, where you had the introduction of Abhidhamma, which is not something that was included in the First Council. It was not there. The Buddha never taught the Abhidhamma the way it was presented 300 years later after his death. Because it's so out there, it's so obtruse, it's so not something that the great teacher would have taught. Unfortunately, many of the translators today have great dedication to that philosophizing attitude. which removes the Dhamma from being so accessible, because they think, well, it can't be that simple. Well, it is. That's why you had so many arahants come out from illiterate populations. Many of the arahants did not know how to read or write. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. The Buddha did the work for us. All we have to do is remove the gunk, and the colors, the original colors, are right underneath them. So this is what my goal has been in retranslating as best as I can, given the tools that I have, and especially the time and physical energy that I have left in me. I am not as strong as I was, healthy as I was a year ago or 2 years ago. But this work must be done. And hopefully the work that I'm doing is encouraging some people to take a different look at the Dhamma and try to remove those extra unnecessary interpretations of it that were added through the course of time, and even are being perpetuated in this modern age, in this tradition of misrepresenting the Buddha's teachings. And at the same time, it's a call for other translators to look at the Buddha's words minus the philosophizing, minus the separating the human element with which the Buddha always taught. Every single discourse you have that human element, the context, the rendition, the humanity, the empathy, the understanding, the relationship in the words. They're all there. All those nuances are beautifully there. If we remove our own interpretations of them, and this is where the words I'm choosing are for the scholarly types. And that has a lot to do with conceit and ignorance, which must go out the door. We cannot function as translators, as even presenters, conveyors of the Dhamma. We cannot. Especially when it's going into writing, any form of writing that represents the Dhamma for future generations. So if I'm putting something out there, it better not be something for the sake of, well, I need to get this out there as soon as possible. I need to finish these sections or these suttas with chunks and chunks of material missing, dots added, where there needs to be the actual statement, portions of the discourses present. And if a statement does not make sense, then please do take the time to explore, to understand, instead of just, yeah, well, this is what the other translators have said, so let me just continue that. Well, what's the point in you translating it now either? You know, what is the point in you doing this work? Unless you're presenting something truly eye-opening, helpful, removing the gunk. That has been collected from your predecessor translators. And just the fact that time and cultures and different modes of thinking have put their smudges on it, on the Dhamma. So we need to come back to a more simplified attitude, which requires more work, I understand. But this is where the suttas have to be lived in the, living experience of the translator. You cannot be detached from it. Science, when it's conducted in a laboratory, it carries, the experiment itself will carry the scientist with it. It will have an impact on the outcome as to who is doing the work. So let us be as pure as possible in our work of translating. We cannot be detached from it. We cannot just be the observer and not have any impact. Of course, we have much impact on the work that we do. So we need to be a lot more responsible towards the Dhamma in representing the Dhamma and put out the ego, this incredible level of conceit that is out there, that unfortunately is being turned ink on paper, whether it's digital or not. Because we carry the responsibility of representing Lord Buddha's words, the truths in them, in the teachings. That is my invitation.